to. So take a look, watch that video, because it's going to explain how we sweat copper pipe. So how we join copper pipe, how we would, do the black pipe, how we make threads on the black pipe, and then how we do the PVC. We're going to kind of see some of that PVC, but it's going to be, it's a little bit modified from, what we would normally do. So that video kind of explains and kind of goes through those things, goes through some of the tooling and stuff. Today, we're not going to do that. You guys all had the opportunity, for those that picked up your stuff, you guys got to cut with the little PVC cutters, and you got to see how easy that is. For those that I, gave to you or I mailed off to you, obviously I cut those pipes for you, to the different lengths. So you guys didn't get to see that, but the video explains it. Super, super easy to cut PVC pipe. In fact, you can cut PVC pipe with almost anything. And most of you, I told you, I was, thinking about giving you a pipe and having you guys cut it with something at your house. And I thought about using a bread knife because it's got the serrations on it. And it cuts it. A bread knife can cut PVC pipe, but I ended up kind of cutting my finger a little bit. It's kind of healed up now. I kind of cut my finger a little bit with it. And so I was like, well, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to, put you guys to where it's going to be unsafe, but you can even cut PVC pipe with string. So you can take string and you can cut PVC pipe with that. And the video shows you, how we can do that. But hacksaws, really anything, any kind of blade, any blade that can cut, like in a woodworking shop, any one of those blades will cut PVC pipe. It's really, really easy to work with, which is why I decided that, we can kind of put a little project together for this. Now, the sprinklers you're going to build, these things are pretty much the same thing that we would be doing in class, minus the copper and minus the black pipe. And the sprinklers actually work pretty good. And so you guys are going to have something that, if you don't have sprinklers built into a lawn, or you've just got a small little area you want to water, these little sprinklers are going to do a pretty good job of that. They will function. So hopefully it'll be pretty cool. Hopefully you'll have, something cool. And then the following week, not next week because we have Thanksgiving, but the following week we'll do the electrical stuff. And that's going to be a little bit more involved. There's going to be a little bit more, but this stuff, I feel like it's going to go, pretty quickly. So yeah, we'll just, you guys have any questions right now? I'm going to go through equipment and stuff like that and kind of make sure we got our pieces and whatnot. All right. So in your bags and kind of what you cut, you should end up and you should have 5 pieces of pipe. These things should be the same length. We're not too concerned with the measurements. If it was in class, we'd be putting these together. I would be measuring them. I would make sure that we're, meeting those standards, and I'd be grading them. I'm not going to do that. What you are going to do, you are going to turn your project in, but when you get these things assembled, and if you're going to do it right now along with us, great. If you, are going to kind of wait and just kind of watch it, you are more than welcome to do that. You don't necessarily have to complete that right now in front, but if you want to, and if you have some issues or things like that, I can kind of work with you, on that. So completely up to you on whether or not you want to do it right now with me, or just kind of watch it and then do it later, or maybe right after this. You can do that. Where was I going with that? I don't know. I lost my train of thought. So we should have the pieces of pipe. You should have 5 of them. You notice I've got this one. I've got a little end cap on here. I'm going to show you something with this because I had this stuff assembled. And if you have it assembled to basically put these things together, sometimes it might be a little bit struggling. It might be a struggle to kind of put them up, pull them apart. So I'll go over how we can, potentially get those things apart. If you've got nail polish, this is just like a clear coat, like top nail polish stuff. I think the colors are going to work. I was going to try it and I completely forgot. I was going to grab some of my wife's nail polish and try this, but I think it's going to work the same way because of the ingredients in there. This is going to be in place of glue. Normally we use a primer that's going to basically clean the pipes, and we do the outside of the pipe and we do the inside of a fitting. We apply a primer, we apply a glue, and then we basically put these things together, and it's, solidifies those things together and joins them. And you can't pull them apart once they're there. This little nail polish, there's a little piece that I put together here, and you can't really see it. I don't think the camera is going to kind of pick it up. But you can kind of see some of the lettering here. That nail polish kind of started to kind of eat away at the lettering that's on the outside of this pipe and just kind of washes it off. This is essentially just printed on there, which is actually a really good sign that it does that, because it's kind of, when we glue PVC pipe, we actually are kind of melting that pipe a little bit with the primer. And that glue helps seal up the joint between these two things. And this pipe right here was, I glued together earlier this week with that nail polish, and it's pretty strong. It's going to work pretty well. If you do not have any nail polish, you can still, we actually put these projects together and we did what we would call a dry fit. So we put like the cap on here. There's no glue on this. There's no glue on this piece right here at all. We can theoretically pull them apart, but we actually dry fitted everything together. We put it all together. We connected it into a sprinkler hose and the sprinkler works, and we didn't really see any leaks in here. And if there is some leaks, let's say we don't glue these things together, we're not creating real high pressure, because this sprinkler head that we have is going to relieve the pressure. It's not building up pressure within that system. And it's not a big deal, right? It's a sprinkler. If you turn on the hose, the water is going to be flowing. And if it does have a little bit of leaks out here, it's not that big of a deal. So it held together. Things aren't going to fall apart. But if you have some nail polish, it will kind of solidify these things, and then you will not be able to take them apart once we get these things together. You should have a sprinkler head. You should have two caps. These caps should be slip caps. Sometimes we have caps that are threaded. Those would be stuff that would go on to any threaded fitting. But the pipe, it just kind of slips over the top. Obviously, you can see that right here where it's kind of slipped over that pipe there. We have a female adapter here, and this female adapter, it has threads. I can get this thing in view. It's got threads on one side, and then if we flip it around, it's got a just kind of slip joint on the other. We label these things as an ST, so an XT. That's typically how you'll see them. And it basically says it's a slip thread female coupler. And that's what this thing is, okay? This one, very similar to that. We've got threads that are on the outside. We've got a slip joint in the middle. This is a slip thread, or an ST male adapter. With plumbing, okay, we got female, we got male. I'll let you try to figure out why one would be the other, but yeah, you guys get it. Plumbing is kind of, it's a little bit different. Whoever made the terms and different things there, they don't have them. But we have a female adapter. You should have one of those. You should have one male adapter. We should have this little hose adapter here. So this hose adapter has male threads on it, and then it's got threads on this end with a little rubber O-ring. That rubber O-ring is going to attach to any standard 3/4 inch hose. So if you have a hose, you can attach this end to it. That's what's going to basically connect our plumbing stuff together. You should have two of these T's right here. These ones are all slip. So there's a slip there, slip there, slip there. You can have some of them where it's slip on this side, slip there, and then threaded there. We call that an SSST. On these ones, they're an SSST, right? So an SSTT. Yeah. Anyway, it's kind of, let me write it out so that way you guys can see it. That might make more sense. When you're ordering parts and you're doing these things, you're going to see it, and it's going to be like this. Oh, that's backwards. Let me flip my camera around here. There we go. Okay. So that's how these T's are going to be written, right? So if you want to order this T right here, it's labeled S, right? Small x, S, small x, S. And that lets us know that these T's right here, all three ends have slip threads in there. You might see some.
It was the right way first. It's
what?
Backwards.
It's backwards right now? Way. It was the right. Okay, it was backwards on my screen. Let me flip it back over then. It was backwards on my screen. Okay. Did I flip it? Ooh, let's see. Nope, I didn't flip it yet.
No.
Okay, there we go. I don't know why my screen's backwards, but anyway, we'll show the ones that are going to see that recording. So it's going to be an SSST. Okay. And so when you're ordering these things, it's important that you don't just grab a PVC pipe. We're dealing with all 1/2 inch pipe here. 1/2 inch pipe is no different than 3/4 inch pipe, than 1 inch pipe, than 2 inch pipe. It really is the same thing. It just depends on the fittings and the size of the pipe. So the 1/2 inch stuff is cheaper than like 3/4 inch, but you could theoretically do the same thing, with 3/4 inch. But like in a high school program, we do everything with 1/2 inch just because it's easier. A lot of stuff that we have in your homes, you may have like 3/4 inches is kind of the standard. You may have some stuff that's 1 inch as you have lines that are coming in, and they tend to reduce down as they get closer to the end, of stuff. A lot of my irrigation at my house for my sprinklers, it's all 3/4 inch lines, and then it comes up in the very top, and then it's 1/2 inch stuff, at the very end, like where the sprinkler head would connect to. But some of them are there, so you got to be able to kind of identify them. On these pipes, you may or may not have some of them because you've got small pieces here. I kind of cut a little piece off right here. This one says it's a little, just a 1/2 inch, right? It says 1/2. You might see them where it's 3/4, right? It's 3/4. But matching the equipment, making sure you're getting the right size, and then making sure, are we dealing with threaded stuff? Are we dealing with pipe that's going to slip in? So just kind of be aware of that. You can't just go and grab something that looks like this. You have to identify, does it have threads or not? Because there are different styles. There's some of these that are threaded on all 3 sides. There's some of them that are just threaded on the top, and there are these ones that are just a slip. You should have 2 ends that are slipped on all sides. Okay. So you should have that. I hope I didn't screw it up when I was putting these things together, but I think everything should be good. If there is an issue, you can let me know and we will work around trying to get you the stuff, to get you the right equipment. But I think you guys should be good with that. So that's kind of our equipment, that we've got here. Do you guys care to, let's take a guess on which one, not that stuff. Which one of these things is the cheapest, and which one do you think is the most expensive? Just kind of curious what your thoughts are.
I would say the long pipe itself might be the cheapest, and then the adapters to connect them would be next, and then the sprinkler head would be the most expensive.
Okay, so like you're saying, like these things are kind of mid-range price, and this one's the most expensive one. This one's pretty expensive. I think it's like $1.69, I think, for the sprinkler head, and it's got a brass fitting in it. It's actually a really good sprinkler head. Like every student that I've had that has made these things and they plug them in, they're like, man, this thing sprays. It sprays like 15 feet in diameter. So it's actually a pretty good little sprinkler. The pipe for sure is the cheapest stuff on this whole project. You can get a 10-foot length of this pipe, and it's like $2 for a 10-foot length of it. So the pipe is really pretty cheap, which is why we use PVC a lot for like irrigation lines, because we can run the stuff in there. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And you can run a lot of length without, costing too much. As you start getting into the higher stuff, like the 2-inch pipes and stuff, that tends to get more expensive. Obviously, you're paying for more material. We do not use PVC pipes for like in your home type irrigation. Okay. So like if you're running water to like bathtubs to sinks and stuff like that, PVC pipe is not something that we use. It's really strictly for irrigation lines for the most part. We use like a black pipe or a galvanized pipe. We use a copper pipe on the inside of houses, which is, a little bit more expensive, but that lasts a long time. And then we also will use PEX tubing, which is kind of it's a somewhat flexible tubing. In newer homes, if you have like trailers and stuff, trailers typically are going to have PEX tubing, super lightweight, easy to work with. Again, the pipe isn't expensive, but it's the fittings on those things that cost a little bit more. Same thing with these fittings cost a little bit more. But the PEX tubing will allow us, the way that plastic pipe is designed, it allows us to run hot water through it. PVC pipe, you cannot run hot water through. The pipe will get kind of soft, it'll kind of melt. We can't do that. We can only run cold water lines, which is why you see this stuff primarily for irrigation purposes. So the sprinkler head is pretty expensive, but actually the most expensive one is this little hose adapter here. And this one's like just a little under $2 for this thing right here. The rest of these fittings, they're pretty cheap. They're a couple cents, but still more expensive, than what that pipe is. And tell you what, man, when I buy this stuff for this class, we had like 40 of these things. These things are kind of tough. I think I had to go back to Home Depot like 3 times, maybe 4 times to get enough of these things, because I buy everything that Home Depot has. And then I have to wait for them to order more of them, which can be kind of a pain. And I've done before where people are like, hey, you can order things and you can do that, but I've never had luck with that. And I've gone back to like the store before and they're like, oh yeah, we don't have that. And I'm like, I ordered it, And so I just go in there and I just buy these things. And I've done this before where I've had like 120 different projects that we had to buy. And it gets tough. These ones are nice because they come in 10 packs. You can buy them in a bulk pack because they're used quite a bit, but not a lot of people use these things. So they don't really have, a ton of them in stock. But anyway, let's move on to this. Now, if you were kind of curious, and you don't have to tell me if you were, but you can, maybe you were curious, maybe you opened up this bag and maybe you're like, I'm going to start putting these things together. Okay. And let's say you started kind of assembling these things and you start pushing them together. You kind of dry fit these to kind of, push them there. You can take with your hands, you can take it and you can grab it and you can twist these things off. But sometimes things get pushed on a little bit too tight. And when we do dry fits, this is kind of, what we like to do. We like to know how far it goes into that pipe. Typically on this 1/2 inch stuff, it goes in 3/4 of an inch. So on the length of this pipe, you're going to lose 3/4 of an inch on either side. And so if we were measuring these things, we would account for how much pipe would go into the fitting. And then we would add that to our length. If we wanted our length to be so many inches from here to there, we would have to add the length of the pipe that goes in the fitting. And when you're doing dry fitting like this, it can be kind of tough because sometimes it doesn't go in all the way. And you may take this thing and you may just kind of hammer on it on the end and push it in, and you may have trouble loosening these things up. If you've got a strong grip, you can do that. I do, but I can't get like this cap off of here. This is the one that we tested with to make sure that it was going to work. I can't get that off. Now you can take some pliers and if you have a vise or something like that, you can clamp it in a vise. Typically at school, we've got pliers, we've got all the stuff, and you can kind of, put a little pipe wrench or some pliers on here and you can twist these things off. So if you happen to press these things together, it's not that big of a deal. Try to pull them apart as much as you can. Because when we go to put this nail polish on to glue it, we need those things to be separated. If you did happen to put these things on and you can't get them apart, try some pliers if you've got some of those things. Or I've got this little piece of round stock that I had just kind of laying in my office. And this round stock can actually go up kind of on the inside of this pipe right there. And I can simply just take this pipe, I can hit it up against the ground and basically just kind of pop this thing off. And you can do the same thing if the pipe is like in here. You'll notice, can you see that edge of that pipe? I'm going to pull this thing out maybe here. You see that pipe that kind of comes in and you can see it's kind of recessed down. You can take something and kind of like hammer that out. Doesn't necessarily, you may not have a piece of round stock, but anything, if you've got like a long screwdriver, you could put a long screwdriver into here and you can kind of hit it out. But I'm going to do that real quick. I'm just going to kind of go, maybe I'll do this. So I'm just going to take this thing. I'm just going to hit this against the table. Uh-oh. Popped it off. Go grab it real quick. So might be kind of tough, but we got that thing off. Now we can actually start kind of working on assembling these things together and putting them together. So generally, and if you want to kind of do this, my suggestion, maybe you can kind of just lightly put these things on. Don't like press them on. Don't take them and hit them against the table to try to push those things on. But the general order that we've got here is we're going to have a cap that's going to be on one end. We're going to have a T that's going to go right here. We're going to take another one on the opposite end. We'll push that on there. We're going to push that cap right there. We've got this PVC. All these PVC pipes are the same length, so don't worry about which pipe. You don't have to specifically, worry about that. So we've got this little kind of T set up right here. What we're going to do is we're going to take our other little slip T that we have here. We're going to push these things on. What's important is when we go to glue these things together, and we're just doing a dry fit. We're not trying to press these things on, okay? So that way you can pull them apart really easy. We're going to put the other pipe right in there. And that pipe's going to go into the top there. See if I can get you guys up a little bit so you can see. So that's basically what we've got. There's a couple more pieces that we need to put on. Okay. One is going to be this male thread. That's going to go on the very top right here. Our sprinkler cap is just going to thread onto here. And this stuff you can just do hand tight. You don't necessarily have to do that right now, but we can kind of set that up. We've got our female end. That's going to go on that cap. And then this is where our little sprinkler adapter is going to go in. And again, on these threads right here, you can just kind of hand tighten these things. So that's essentially what we need to put together. If you've got glue, okay, or if you've got that nail polish, if you have PVC glue, you can use, PVC glue too, but I don't assume that most of you probably don't have that. So what we can do is if we've got glue, we're going to pull these things apart, and you can kind of leave this thing assembled as is. So that way you make sure you got the parts kind of in the right order, and make sure you don't mess this thing up, and put things wrong. The one thing though, is when you go to glue like this stuff together, you don't want this thing like tilted at an angle, because once it gets glued, it's going to be in there. And really the joint that really matters is when you do this one, you got to make sure that you're pretty square with this stuff. You can eyeball it. You don't have to put a square up to it. You can eyeball it, but you're going to want to make sure that this thing is vertical. That's going to give you the best function with this sprinkler. But the nice thing with this, you attach a hose to it. You've got these two end caps. These things are really just designed to keep the sprinkler from falling over one way or the other. So that's why we cap those things off, just so it holds that water. All that water that's going to come in is obviously going to come out of that sprinkler head right there. When we go to glue these things, we only glue the slipped joints together. So we're going to glue all of these different parts right here. We are not going to glue threaded stuff. Anything that has threads, we never glue. If we have threads, we typically would put like a thread sealant tape or a paste on the outside. We don't need to do that on this. Normally in class, I would have you guys put the tape on all threaded fittings, but you really don't need tape on PVC fittings. If it's PVC to PVC, you don't have to have that. If it's metal pipe, you definitely need to have some sort of Teflon paste, or you need some tape to be able to wrap around it. And I show you guys that in the plumbing video. You can see that, and you'll have access. Well, you have access to it now, so you can do that. When we go to glue, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this front piece off, and I'm going to pull this little PVC pipe out. And what I'm going to do, sorry, Williams is at my door, being weird. Okay. You may want to do this, maybe lay, like a paper towel or something down, to, prevent the stuff from, making a mess. But with PVC primer, we're going to take our primer, we open it up, we do both the inside of the fitting and the outside of the pipe. We're going to kind of do the same thing, like we would for the primer, and the glue. So we would do primer and glue. On this, we're simply just going to take our little brush right here. We're going to get some of that stuff on, and all we're going to do is just kind of coat the inside of this. We can set this pipe down. I like to do my fitting first and not my pipe, because my fitting I can lay down and not make a big mess. I can then just kind of paint the outside of my pipe here. Try to go about maybe 1/2 inch or so. And then you're going to take these two pieces, and with that liquid in there, they tend to slide a little bit more, and they will go in. When you dry fit it, if you hit on top of it, it's going to, it's going to be kind of rough. But the liquid on there allows those things to basically slip in there and get all the way into that joint. So you're going to want to make sure you press that in to get it all the way in there. You'll notice, and I'll glue the other ones too, so you can see, but when we do this, I push it in and then I twist it. It's the same process that you would do if it was glue. And the reason you twist it is to kind of seal those things around. Typically we use a red hot blue glue, and you would see like a little bead of glue kind of form on the outside. And so when you do that twisting, you press those things in there, you basically have that, you see that bead. Ideally, you don't want to make a big mess. With this clear nail polish, it's kind of nice because it doesn't make a big mess. You can't really see it at all. I don't think the camera's probably going to pick any of that up. In person, I can kind of see that it's there. And really, it only takes maybe 30 seconds for this stuff to really set up and to really solidify. So once we get that, we can take this piece. We're going to do that same thing there. We're going to kind of paint the inside. We'll paint the outside. Again, I do my fittings first because then I can just lay it down. And then I can just kind of hold on to it. And I just go around in a circle, try to coat, you know, a bunch of this stuff on here. And all we're going to do is just press those things in. Sometimes you hold it. Okay. So you twist it back and forth a little bit or give it a 1/4 inch turn and you hold it in there. Because with glue, especially, and maybe not so much with this nail polish, but that glue, what happens sometimes is it wants to kind of push that pipe out. So if you hold it there for just a couple of seconds, what'll happen is it will take that. Why is this thing so bright? Let me close my blinds. Might be a better. That white is just kind of getting everything washed out here. All right. Looks a little bit better. So these two pieces now are glued. We can take this. We can glue this inside piece right here. Same process, right? This is all we're doing is basically pushing these things. If you don't have any of this stuff, you can just press these things together and it will hold. You just got to make sure that you're taking it and you're using your hands and you're really pressing these things in together tight. You can take a little hammer if you want, or maybe not a hammer, but if you've got like a, oh, that's the wrong one. Make sure we get it on the right side there. So we've got that piece there. And you could see this process is not that difficult. I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit and just glue all these things together. Once you have everything cut, and because we cut all these things, you've got all your pieces, should be pretty simple. I'm going to try to show you what this thing's going to do on this paint right here. You've got to be pretty quick with these things. You basically paint it. You don't want to sit there and wait, but you can kind of see a little bit how the numbering starts to kind of fade a little bit. And as we push these things in, you can see that there's a black kind of around there. That's just that lettering that starts to kind of melt. And that's a good sign. That's what you want to see, because that means that pipe is kind of melting where we're putting that stuff. I'm not sure exactly what's inside of the nail polish, but it's the same, you know, type of ingredient that we have in the, it's the same type of ingredient that we have in the glues that we use and the primers that helps kind of melt and soften the pipe. So because it does that same thing, you really do end up getting a pretty good joint on these things like you would if it was just regular glue. These ones don't really matter because you're just going to basically push that on and this thing's going to twist. There's no direction on the sprinkler head, so we don't really need to be concerned with that. This is going to be the joint that we really want to focus on the orientation to make sure that we've got this thing oriented correctly and we're not going to be leaning. Because once you glue these things together, there is no taking these things apart. You have to buy all new stuff to be able to get these things in there again. Oh. Again, it's the outside of the pipe and the inside of the fitting. So we're going to take these things. We're going to just kind of make sure we set this stuff. You got a little bit, you got a couple seconds to where you can kind of move it. And then once it's there, just kind of let it set up. You need a little bit more than that. When you're doing this, sometimes the plumbing, it's going to be a lot of times if it's irrigation lines, right, for a sprinkler, it's going to be under the ground. We're really not concerned with what it looks like, but we always like to have quality. We don't want to make a big mess. And if we're putting primer, primer is really thin and it'll just kind of like leak all over the place. And if we're putting primer, we don't really want to tilt it like this. We want to kind of tilt it down in that direction, because that's going to, you know, cause that stuff not to drip on that pipe and cover this thing. And the primer is purple and it can paint the whole project purple. We like to have a good quality just because craftsmanship makes a big difference. If somebody's watching you do work and they see and it looks really sloppy and it looks like you didn't really care about trying to be clean or the cleanliness of it, it's kind of indicative that your work maybe isn't up to the same kind of quality. Some glue that you have, like I said, we use the Red Hot Blue glue typically. So it's a blue colored, like a bright blue color. And it's nice because you can kind of see the size of that pipe. You can kind of see where that glue's at, but they do have clear PVC glue. It's going to do the same exact thing. You'll notice this thing now. Nope, it moved just a little bit. This stuff takes a little bit longer. PVC pipe, if it was glue, that joint would already be solidified. On these, it's still got a little bit of movement, you know, in there. So we're going to give it a little bit more time than what a regular glue. So which is actually kind of good for you. So you have a little bit extra time to kind of move these things around. But just going through, and you notice how I'm just taking these things off, kind of keeping them together, just doing one joint at a time, right? You do want to make sure that they don't dry as you're doing it. So that's why you're doing it one fitting at a time. Sometimes if the pipe is dirty, like if you're working, you know, in the ground, let's say you're trying to repair some lines that are in the ground, you will end up having like dirt and other debris on these things. These pipe are clean. They're straight from the store. Everything, you know, is good. So we don't need to worry about that. But if you're in like a, you know, in a pit and you've got like mud and different things there, it's a good idea to kind of wipe it down with a rag before you start putting these things on, because then that dirt and that debris is basically going to get in the way of these things. So that is pretty much it. If you want to just hand tight, you can use some pliers on here to kind of tighten those things down a little bit, but hand tight on these things is going to be just fine for you. The biggest thing when we're doing threads, okay, you should see a couple threads left over. We never want to thread stuff all the way in. Okay, so if you have something and you're threading it to where you don't see like 2 to maybe 3 threads there, you're putting it too far into this thing. And very often what happens with this PVC pipe is it's going to crack and it's going to break that thing. And once it does that, it's done. There's nothing you can do. You can't glue those things back together. They're not going to hold that pressure. But on these things, kind of for what we're doing and for the purpose of this, because it's a sprinkler, hand tight is going to be fine. Normally you're going to take a wrench or something and you're going to tighten them up, but you're always going to see a couple threads left over. It's never going to be completely gone. But that right there is our sprinkler project. That's, you know, basically putting everything together. We've got our hose adapter, our female adapter. We've got our slip T. We've got our female or our male adapter here with our sprinkler head, our slip T there, and then our caps on the end. And that's now solidified there. That's pretty strong. Cool.
McKenna, I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you glue the caps on there as well?
I did, yeah.
Okay, cool. I kind of missed it, but thank you.
anything that has a slipped thread, we glue. Do not glue the threaded stuff. Okay, anything with threads, we do not put glue on. I've seen students do that before, but yeah, that's not right. We shouldn't do that. Yeah, so anything with threads, we don't glue. Anything that's slipped, you can. And if you don't have like nail polish or anything like that, like I said, just take these things, put them together, and you can just take your hand and you can just kind of hammer it down with your hand, or you can hammer it down with a hammer, or a rubber mallet would be a little bit better because it's not going to damage that PVC pipe. But any one of those things, just to kind of get those things pressed in. And once they're pressed in, it's really hard to take them apart. And that water that goes in here, it's not going to blow those caps off or blow this T off right there. But the nail polish will kind of solidify it. It's going to hold those things in place and make sure that they don't come out. Oh man, I just seen that Kaylee was in here. Kaylee, I'm sorry, I missed you. I wasn't even looking at that. So what questions do you guys have about this?
So how do we submit it? Do we just take pictures of it and stuff?
Yeah. So if you to submit it, all I want to do is just basically see it completed to know that you put it together. Normally, I would take them and I would measure them and stuff like that, but it's too much work to try to get them back to me and then have me grade them, and then obviously I'm going to get them back to you so that way you have that. But if you just take a picture of it, show me that you have it. Obviously, we've cut those things together. That's kind of the biggest thing. So all we really need to do is kind of assemble this. Plumbing is a pretty quick, especially with PVC. It's a pretty quick process, and it doesn't take very much. So yeah, just take a picture. If you want to do a couple, you can, but one picture, would be fine. A view like this, or if you wanted to kind of, have it right here to try to verify that you were square and it wasn't tilted on the end or whatever. But basically, as long as you guys do this, I'm going to give you guys the points for it. I'm not gonna sit there and grade it and be like, yeah, that looks short or that doesn't look right. All the pipes are the same length. Everything's there. So it really doesn't matter. As long as it looks like this and not some other kind of orientation, then yeah, then you've done it. Any other questions?
Is there a folder submission for the pictures of the project?
So there's an assignment that I created called the Sprinkler Project. And so if you just take that, I'm pretty sure I have it. Let me see. I will try to post it in 2 different spots here, but normally I put it in the pages. I may not have put it in the pages right there, but I will put it in the page there. Yeah, no, I haven't put it in the page, but I will add it in the page. But if you look at the main module, let me go share screen here. If you look in here, the Sprinkler Project is, get rid of those. The Sprinkler Project is right here. And so you just, click on that, upload the picture into this thing. That's all you've got to do, to that. So once you get it completed, take a picture, upload it, and then you're good to go.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. If you guys don't have any other questions, you guys are free to go. And I will post this video up so you guys will have it so you can kind of look back on it. I know I went fairly quick, but I mean, I guess it's already 2:42, so maybe it didn't go as quick as I thought.